She was known for making women feel beautiful. Loved for her smile, praised for her talent, followed by thousands online. But on a quiet Thursday night, her neighbors saw something they'll never forget. Flames rising from her car, and no one inside could scream for help. Watch until the end. This story will change the way you see love, loyalty, and control. She had it all. At 27, Brittany Allen was living the dream many only wish for: a successful business, a strong social media following, and a future that looked brighter with every passing day. Her beauty salon was the heart of her world, a place where clients came to not only get their hair done but to feel seen, to feel empowered. And to Brittany, that was everything. She loved what she did. She loved how she made others feel, especially women. She made them feel like they could take on the world. But in the hours leading up to her death, that world was about to shatter. It was June 2, 2023, a Thursday evening. Brittany had just finished a long day at the salon. She said her goodbyes, grabbed her things, and stepped into her car. There was nothing unusual about that night, nothing that would have warned anyone what was coming next. She was excited for her upcoming weekend plans, looking forward to time spent with friends and family. She had no reason to think that would be her last night on Earth. But as the clock ticked on, something would happen that would forever change the lives of those who knew her. Just hours after leaving the salon, Brittany's car was seen engulfed in flames. Neighbors watched in horror as the fire quickly consumed the vehicle, its thick black smoke choking the night air. Yet, there was something about the way that fire burned. Something about the panic in the air that didn't sit right. When authorities arrived at the scene, they found the car, but there was no sign of Brittany. Her body, nowhere to be found. At first, investigators thought this could be a tragic accident. Maybe something went wrong. Maybe there was a malfunction, a spark that led to a fire. But as they combed through the evidence, the pieces of this puzzle didn't fit together in any way they could have expected. Security footage revealed that Brittany had been at the gas station just hours before her car was found burning. But what was most chilling? There was someone with her that night, a man, someone close to her, someone who seemed to be waiting for something to happen. As the case unraveled, it became clear. This was no accident. Brittany hadn't just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. She hadn't just been a victim of some random act of violence. She had been murdered. The man in the footage? Marcus Bryant, Brittany's boyfriend. A man who had spent the last 2 years with her, a man who, at the surface, seemed loving and kind. But underneath it all, he harbored a possessiveness, a jealousy, a need for control that would destroy everything. How do we go from a man who claims to love someone, to a man who sets fire to their world, and then watches it burn? How does a relationship, built on promises and dreams, turn into a nightmare? Was Marcus the loving boyfriend he claimed to be? Or had something darker been brewing beneath his charming exterior? What led him to kill the woman he was supposed to love, and why did he feel so entitled to her life? This is the story of Brittany Allen, how a promising young woman, full of potential and love, was taken from this world. But this isn't just Brittany's story. It's a story about jealousy, control, and the way that love can be twisted into something monstrous. Her death will haunt us, not just because of the brutality, but because of the warning signs we missed. Because we didn't listen when she whispered the truth. Because we thought we knew who he was. But we were wrong. Stay with us. There's so much more to this story than we've been told so far. And the truth? The truth will make you rethink everything you know about trust, love, and the people closest to us. What happened that night? And why, after everything, did Marcus Bryant think he could get away with it? As the fire blazed through the night, it didn't just consume Brittany's car, it consumed the truth. At least, for a while. The investigation began with few leads, no immediate suspects, and no clear understanding of why someone would want to hurt Brittany, let alone kill her. But the more they dug, the more twisted the story became. Her family was the first to sound the alarm. Brittany's sister, Janine, couldn't reach her that night. At first, she thought maybe Brittany had just gotten busy. She'd been known to stay up late sometimes, working on new styles, interacting with clients on social media, or talking to friends. But as the hours stretched on, Janine's worry grew. Brittany would never just disappear without saying something. That was not who she was. It wasn't like her to ignore her phone or messages. Something was wrong. By the time the fire was reported, Janine had already started making calls. She reached out to Brittany's friends, her clients, anyone who might know where she was. But no one had seen her. No one had heard from her. The panic set in, and Janine contacted the police. What they found on that dark road, nothing but the charred remains of Brittany's car, was chilling enough, but it wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the search that followed. The search for answers that seemed to lead nowhere. In the hours after the fire, no one had a clue where Brittany was, if she had gotten out in time or if she was already gone. Then, as investigators reviewed the footage from nearby security cameras, a breakthrough came. A man had been seen walking away from the scene just moments before the fire started. That man was Marcus Bryant, Brittany's boyfriend. He had been nearby when the car was set on fire, but what was most chilling was that he was there at the gas station earlier in the evening. Investigators were quick to check his receipts. Sure enough, he had bought gas that night, around 7:53 p.m. But why? Why buy gas at that hour, when no one had seen Brittany in the immediate vicinity? At first, Marcus tried to distance himself from the situation. He told the police that he had no idea what had happened, that he hadn't seen Brittany after they had spoken earlier in the day. He seemed calm, collected, too calm, perhaps. He had an alibi, he had been with friends earlier that evening, or so he claimed. But there were holes in his story. The thing about alibis is, they often depend on the witnesses, and Marcus's didn't quite add up. His friend said he left earlier than he said he did. And then there was the phone call, the one he had made to Brittany just minutes before her phone went dead. The one that lasted only 37 seconds, with no explanation for what was said, no record of what had happened. But the real bombshell came when investigators learned about the text messages, messages that painted a much darker picture of Marcus. There were dozens of messages between him and Brittany, messages that began sweet and loving, but grew controlling and threatening over time. It wasn't a pretty picture. In some of the texts, Marcus told Brittany how much he needed her, how much he couldn't live without her. But in others, his words turned dark. "I can't stand you talking to other guys," one message read. "Don't think I won't make sure you regret it if you ever leave me." Brittany had brushed it off at first, thinking it was just jealousy, something that would pass. But over time, Marcus's behavior became more erratic. He would show up unannounced, confront her over the smallest things, and accuse her of flirting with customers. It wasn't the love she thought it was, and somewhere deep down, Brittany had begun to realize just how dangerous he could be. Investigators also discovered something else, something that would break her family's heart. In the days leading up to her death, Brittany had confided in a close friend. She had sent a voice note, one that was filled with fear and regret. "If something happens to me, just know I tried. I'm scared," the message said. It wasn't the kind of message someone sends unless they're already thinking about the worst-case scenario. And then there was the fire itself. It wasn't just a random act of violence. No, this was calculated. The accelerant found on Marcus's clothing, the gas he bought earlier that night, all of it pointed to the fact that he had meticulously planned what he would do. The fire was no accident. It was a statement. A way to erase any trace of what had happened. The timeline of the evening was becoming clearer, and the more pieces that fell into place, the harder it became for Marcus to deny his involvement. Security footage showed him walking away from the scene just minutes before the car exploded. His alibi crumbled when the people he claimed to have been with couldn't back up his story. By the time the police had gathered all the evidence, it was clear, Marcus had killed Brittany. But what had led him to do such a thing? What made a man so consumed by jealousy that he would take the life of someone he claimed to love? The truth was both shocking and heartbreaking. Marcus didn't just want Brittany to love him, he wanted to own her. He couldn't handle the idea of her being admired by others. He couldn't stand the thought of her being more successful than him. His jealousy had twisted into an all-consuming rage. The more Brittany thrived, the more his resentment grew. It wasn't just about love. It was about control. It was about Marcus feeling threatened by Brittany's independence, her strength, her confidence. The same qualities that made her so loved by everyone around her were the very things he saw as a threat. And in the end, he couldn't bear it. The turning point in the investigation came when DNA evidence was found on Marcus's clothes, linking him directly to the crime scene. His confession, when it finally came, was chilling in its lack of remorse. He admitted to buying the gas, to starting the fire, and even to disposing of the evidence afterward. But his reasons? He still tried to justify his actions, claiming it was a crime of passion, as if that somehow made it less horrifying. The trial was swift. Marcus Bryant was convicted of second-degree murder, arson, and obstruction of justice. The courtroom was filled with anger, grief, and disbelief. Brittany's family was shattered. Her friends, her clients, everyone who knew her, couldn't understand how a relationship that once seemed so perfect could end so tragically. But while Marcus's conviction brought some sense of justice, it could never bring Brittany back. And as her family left the courtroom that day, one question remained: how many other stories like Brittany's are out there, stories we never hear about, stories that never make it to the headlines? How many women are silenced before they ever have a chance to speak out? Brittany Allen's story wasn't just about a man who killed her. It was about a woman who fought every day to be strong, to be herself, and to make the world a little better, one client at a time. And in the end, it was about the love that should never have turned into control. It's a reminder of how deep jealousy can run, how control can twist love into something unrecognizable, and how sometimes, the biggest danger comes from the people closest to us. Her story should be remembered, because there are far too many like it that still go unnoticed. Marcus Bryant's trial had come and gone, but the haunting images of Brittany Allen's final days were not so easily erased. Those who knew her, the clients, friends, family, were left grappling with the harsh reality of her murder. They had witnessed her rise as a successful, self-made beautician, a woman who had built her business from the ground up. They had seen her transform people's lives, making them feel beautiful, strong, and confident. Her smile, infectious and genuine, had been her signature. But that same smile had been extinguished by the violent hand of the man who claimed to love her. As the trial concluded and Marcus was sentenced to life in prison, Brittany's family and friends were left in an agonizing limbo. Justice had been served, but it felt hollow. Nothing could replace what they had lost. They couldn't bring Brittany back. They couldn't erase the image of her last moments, the fear, the pain, the fire that destroyed not just her body but the future she had worked so hard to build. They knew that no sentence would ever be enough to make up for the years she had left unlived. Brittany's mother, Tamara, was perhaps the hardest hit. Her daughter had been her everything, her pride and joy. The grief that Tamara felt was overwhelming, paralyzing. She still couldn't understand how someone so close to Brittany could commit such a horrible act. How had Marcus, a man Brittany had once trusted, become her executioner? The betrayal was unfathomable, and it left her wondering how many other women, like her daughter, were silently suffering under the weight of manipulation and control. The police investigation into Brittany's death had revealed more than just a jealous boyfriend with violent tendencies. It uncovered a dangerous pattern of abuse and obsession that stretched far beyond the physical boundaries of their relationship. Marcus had carefully concealed his true nature, using charm and affection to lure Brittany in. At first, he had been the perfect boyfriend. His compliments, his constant attention, everything seemed so loving, so reassuring. But over time, the cracks began to show. Brittany had felt the shift in their relationship, but like so many victims of abusive partners, she had tried to justify it. She had tried to brush off the small incidents, the insults disguised as jokes, the controlling behavior, the outbursts of anger when she didn't answer a text right away. She had tried to dismiss his jealousy as nothing more than a sign of love. It was something she had been conditioned to believe, that this was normal, that love was possessive and controlling. But slowly, without realizing it, she had become trapped. She was afraid to speak out, afraid to admit the truth to her friends, her family, and even herself. The realization came too late. Marcus had taken everything from her. The aftermath of Brittany's death rippled through the community, and the impact of her loss could be felt everywhere. Those who had worked with her in the beauty industry were devastated. Brittany had been a mentor to many, guiding young women who dreamed of opening their own businesses. She had given them the courage to pursue their passions, to take risks, to believe in themselves. She had always believed in helping others, even when her own happiness was slowly being suffocated by Marcus's control. Her salon, which had once been a bright, welcoming space for women to relax and feel empowered, was now empty, a cold reminder of what had been lost. The employees she had mentored left the business, unable to continue without her. Brittany had built a community, not just a business. She had given people more than just a makeover, she had given them confidence, purpose, and support. To lose her was to lose a part of their own identity. The community rallied together to honor her legacy. Fundraisers were organized in Brittany's name, and scholarships were set up to help young women pursuing careers in the beauty industry. It wasn't enough to replace what had been stolen from them, but it was something. It was a way to keep Brittany's memory alive, to keep her spirit of generosity and empowerment present in a world that seemed so determined to tear it down. But the question lingered. How many more stories like Brittany's were out there, stories of women who suffered in silence? How many women were caught in relationships that seemed perfect at first but slowly turned into nightmares? How many victims were afraid to speak up because they feared the consequences, because they believed they deserved the abuse, or because they didn't even recognize the danger they were in? The tragic truth is that Brittany's story is not unique. Countless women are subjected to emotional, psychological, and physical abuse every day. Many of them never make the headlines. Their stories are silenced, ignored, or misunderstood. It's easy to dismiss abuse when it's hidden behind closed doors, when the abuser wears the mask of charm and love. It's easy to pretend everything is fine when the signs are subtle, when the manipulation is so well disguised. But Brittany's story was different. It became a wake-up call, a harsh reminder that abuse doesn't always look the way we expect it to. It doesn't always leave visible scars. It doesn't always make a loud noise. But it's there, quietly destroying lives, erasing futures, and leaving families in anguish. For Brittany's family, the trauma of her death will never truly heal. Tamara, her mother, found herself staring at the empty chair in Brittany's room, her daughter's things still untouched, as if she might walk through the door any moment. The pain was unbearable. The grief was overwhelming. But there was also a fire in her, a desire to make sure that Brittany's death wasn't in vain. She became a vocal advocate for domestic violence victims, speaking out about the signs of emotional abuse, the warning signs that could have saved her daughter's life. Tamara knew that if she could reach even one person, if she could help just one woman recognize the warning signs before it was too late, maybe, just maybe, Brittany's death would have some meaning. It wasn't just about finding justice for Brittany anymore. It was about preventing another life from being destroyed in the same way. It was about using Brittany's story to raise awareness, to shine a light on the dangers that lie hidden in relationships that seem perfect on the surface but are rotting from within. As for Marcus Bryant, he would spend the rest of his life in prison, but the damage he had done was irreparable. He had stolen not only Brittany's life but the lives of those who loved her. And in the end, nothing could bring her back. All that remained was a haunting question: how many more victims are out there, just waiting for someone to notice the signs before it's too late? The years following Brittany's tragic death were marked by a deep sense of unresolved grief and a continued search for meaning in a senseless act of violence. The community she had once been so much a part of, the women she had mentored, the clients who had trusted her, her friends and family, remained forever altered. But in the face of this loss, they came together in ways that no one could have imagined, driven by a shared goal, to prevent other families from experiencing the same heartbreak. And then there was Marcus, the man who had been the center of so much of Brittany's life. His trial had been a whirlwind of emotion, filled with accusations, conflicting testimonies, and moments of intense drama. Yet despite the conviction, there was still a part of everyone close to the case that couldn't fully reconcile the man they had once known with the monster that had taken Brittany's life. How had Marcus gone from the seemingly loving, supportive boyfriend to the man who brutally killed the woman he claimed to love? While Marcus spent his days in a maximum security prison, some in the community couldn't help but wonder if the justice system had really delivered the truth. Was he the only one responsible for Brittany's death? Or had there been others who had enabled or even encouraged his actions? In the years following the trial, there were whispers, small hints that maybe there were still questions left unanswered. Some believed Marcus had not acted alone. Others wondered whether his violent tendencies had been overlooked by people who should have known better. Was he a ticking time bomb, ignored by those who had seen his temper flare before? Had anyone really known the full extent of his jealousy, his control, and his volatility? For Tamara, the possibility that Marcus had not been the sole culprit was a haunting thought. She had pored over police reports, combed through testimonies, and spent sleepless nights wondering if there was something more to the story. The pieces just didn't fit. Could there have been others who had witnessed the abuse? People who could have stopped Marcus before he made the ultimate decision to end Brittany's life? As Brittany's anniversary approached each year, the questions resurfaced. Tamara, though proud of the foundation she had built in her daughter's name, found herself more and more obsessed with finding the answers that had eluded her. She didn't just want justice for Brittany, she wanted to understand what had happened. She wanted to know everything, even if it meant confronting a truth that would make the loss even harder to bear. She wanted closure, and she wouldn't stop until she found it. The impact of Brittany's death, however, was not confined to just her family and friends. The community at large began to take notice. The awareness around domestic violence and emotional abuse spread like wildfire, thanks to Tamara's tireless work. More women came forward to share their stories, to speak out about the signs they had ignored, the red flags they had seen but failed to recognize in time. Brittany's name became synonymous with the fight to end domestic abuse, and her legacy lived on through every woman who found the strength to speak out, every life saved by the lessons learned from her tragedy. In the end, Brittany Allen was not just a victim. She was a catalyst for change. Her death, though horrific, sparked a movement. Her story became a rallying cry for those who had been silenced for too long. And as the years passed, Brittany's mother and the countless others whose lives had been touched by her short but powerful life found solace in knowing that her death was not in vain. They knew that Brittany's name would continue to echo in the hearts of those who fought to keep women safe, to protect them from the same fate she had suffered. But even with all the progress, one thing remained painfully clear: some wounds never heal. The hole that Brittany left in the lives of those who loved her would never be filled. Yet in their grief, they found strength. They found a purpose. And they vowed to never let the world forget the beauty and light that Brittany Allen had brought to it, before it was cruelly extinguished. As the years wore on, the pain of Brittany Allen's death became a permanent fixture in the lives of those who had known her best. Her mother, Tamara, spent every waking moment not just honoring her daughter's memory but channeling her heartbreak into a relentless pursuit of justice and understanding. The Brittany Allen Foundation had grown into a beacon of hope for many, yet it was also a stark reminder that while progress had been made, no amount of advocacy could bring back the life that was so senselessly stolen. Then, one fateful day, a breakthrough came when a cold case investigator stumbled upon new evidence that had been overlooked during the initial investigation. Hidden in the digital records from Brittany's phone was a series of messages between Marcus and another woman, a woman who had, until that moment, been entirely unknown to Brittany's family. The messages were chilling. They revealed that Marcus had been secretly seeing this woman in the weeks leading up to Brittany's death. The woman was not just someone from his past, she was someone who had also been the victim of his volatile temper. The messages hinted at a relationship built on lies and deception, and the more investigators dug, the more they began to piece together a story that no one had expected. Tamara, upon hearing about this new development, felt a mix of disbelief and rage. For years, she had lived with the knowledge that Brittany had died at the hands of a man she loved, had trusted. But now, it seemed as though there had been more to Marcus's story than anyone had realized. The idea that Brittany had been caught in a web of deception, not just with Marcus but also with another woman who may have been manipulated by him, was almost too much to bear. It painted a picture of Marcus as someone who had been playing a game, someone who had never truly cared for Brittany, someone who had used her for his own twisted purposes. As this new information came to light, it became clear that the case was far from closed. Investigators began to revisit the crime scene, looking for overlooked evidence, searching for any trace of the other woman's involvement in Brittany's death. What did she know? Had she been complicit? Had she, too, been a victim of Marcus's manipulation, or had she been someone who had encouraged his jealousy and violence? These questions lingered in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. The trial, which had once seemed so final, was now a distant memory, but for those close to the case, it felt as if they were starting over again. Tamara could not rest until she knew the full extent of Marcus's actions, until she understood the true nature of the relationships that had intersected in her daughter's life. She would not allow herself to be content with a half-truth, not when so much was at stake. She would not rest until Brittany's story was fully told, until every lie, every secret, was exposed. Months passed as the investigation continued. There were more interviews, more testimonies, and, eventually, the discovery of a recording made by the other woman, one that revealed not just Marcus's anger but also his threats, his deep-seated need to control those around him. In the recording, Marcus could be heard boasting about how he had always gotten away with his manipulation, how Brittany was just another pawn in his game. It was a haunting reminder that, even after his conviction, Marcus's darkness had not been fully understood by the court or by those who had been close to Brittany. As the story unfolded, the community that had once been so divided over the case began to unite in a way they hadn't before. Tamara's work with the foundation had brought awareness to the signs of domestic abuse, but now there was a renewed focus on exposing the lengths to which abusive partners would go to control their victims. The revelations about Marcus's manipulation of not just Brittany but others were spreading, becoming part of the public conversation about the dangers of toxic relationships. Brittany's name was being spoken again, not just as a victim, but as a symbol of the fight against control, manipulation, and violence. The case eventually reached a turning point. The new evidence forced the court to reopen the case, and Marcus was retried for his crimes with the additional evidence in hand. It was a moment of vindication for Tamara, though it was bittersweet. The trial, this time, focused not just on the murder but on the underlying patterns of abuse that had been ignored the first time around. As Marcus sat in the courtroom, facing a second trial, he appeared a broken man. His once charming facade had long since faded, replaced by the cold, distant gaze of someone who had been caught in their own lies. When the final verdict came down, it was a long-awaited justice. Marcus was found guilty once again, but this time, the conviction was based not just on the murder itself but on the pattern of psychological and emotional abuse that he had inflicted on Brittany and others before her. It was a victory, but it was one that came at a heavy price. The road to justice had been long, and though Tamara could now rest, she knew that the fight for awareness and prevention would continue. Her daughter's death had sparked a fire, one that had ignited a conversation about the invisible wounds of emotional abuse and the dangers of unchecked jealousy and control. Brittany's story would live on not just as a tragedy, but as a catalyst for change, a reminder that no one is truly free until they are free from manipulation, control, and violence. In the end, Brittany's legacy was one of empowerment. She had become more than just a victim. She had become a symbol for all those who had suffered in silence, for all those who had been manipulated by those they loved, and for all those who would never give up the fight for justice. Her story was a call to action, an unwavering reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a chance to fight back and reclaim one's life. As we come to the end of Brittany's story, the truth is clear: no one should ever have to suffer in silence. Her legacy is a reminder that we all have the power to fight back against abuse, manipulation, and violence, no matter how deep the wounds may run. But the fight doesn't stop here. If Brittany's story moved you, if it made you realize just how crucial it is to recognize the signs of abuse, we need you to take action. Share this video to raise awareness. You might not know it, but your share could save someone's life. Don't forget to like this video, as it helps get this story into the hands of more people who need to hear it. Comment your thoughts, your theories, or even your own experiences. This is a conversation we need to keep having. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We bring you more real-life stories, deep dives into unsolved mysteries, and the truths that are often hidden in the shadows. Join us in spreading knowledge and breaking the silence. Remember, speaking out is the first step in stopping the cycle. Stay aware. Stay safe. And never let the truth be forgotten.